Hello there, wrestling fans. Welcome to another episode of the internationally known Dudes at Ringside podcast. I am Joe Panther the third, and man, oh man, oh man, Ringside crew, you are in for a treat. I have somebody that is very, very, very important to the wrestling community. Miss Gold, welcome to Dudes at Ringside. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Joe. Good to be with you and all the people all over our wacky planet.
Yeah, what a lovely planet we have on.
But it's a
Wow.
good planet. And it's the one we've got. Yeah,
Yeah, I gotta keep it safe, but there's people that don't want to save it. But then we're not. We'll have saved that for another conversation for another day. Um,
absolutely.
so if my American fans, I'm talking about my East Coast baddies, my West Coast saddies, and anybody in between, introduce yourself to my internationally known audience.
Hey to Joe's audience. I'm Zali Gold. I'm based in the very far west coast of America, being on the east coast of Australia, in the city of Melbourne, Australia's second largest city. I'm a late starter to wrestling, which we're going to cover. I'll tease you with that. And but of course, like probably a lot of people who get into wrestling, eventually a lifelong fan of the industry, to quote Jim Ross. And I've always loved it, but it's just sort of come in and out of my life, which we may talk about as well.
Awesome. So let's go back to the beginning of your, as I lately have been calling it, your Marvel DNA bar. Let's go to the
Mhm.
first slash or the first dot. Where did the dot start, and what was it that got you to want to jump into this big vast world of wrestling?
Where did it start? So, being someone, and I said I started late, I am now 60. I first grew up with wrestling in Australia. We had a program, excuse me, in the 1960s and 70s called World Championship Wrestling, which, although not related to WCW, is there. It could be a distant cousin because it was run by Jim Barnett, actually, at one point, who, of course,
Wow.
then went on to be in the what became later the American WCW. But World Championship Wrestling was on network television noon Saturday and noon Sunday, and it was live in Melbourne at our venue called Festival Hall, which is one of our older small to medium sized venues, best known for hosting the Beatles in 1964, and around, I'd say around a 5,000 seater, if for a music gig, and a little less obviously for a wrestling gig in the ring. And I went to Festival Hall on a few Saturday nights, and my main memory is seeing the late great Harley Race, who to me is just one of those no nonsense badass heels. And I still have a love for those sort of heels who are just down to, just badass. And I think he was amazing. He wrestled to a double disqualification with the then Australasian heavyweight champion, a guy called Ron Miller, who, as I understand it, is now in retirement on Australia's Gold Coast, on the east coast of Australia. And unfortunately, in 1978, World Championship Wrestling went off network television, and we didn't have those things called internet in those days. We'd started faxes, but you couldn't really send a wrestling program by fax. And so I lost track of it. It came back on network television in 1985, around the time of the first WrestleMania. It was on another network and was on for 6 years, and then was eventually taken off. And although, of course, the great era that was the Monday Night Wars was in the mid-90s, being a slow adapter to technology, I didn't think to look at things like cable or internet, but only really reconnected in 2002 with some more technology nostalgia. One night when I was bored at home, I went to a video store. There's a blast from the past. Couldn't find a movie, and there was SummerSlam 2002 in the section beyond the movies. The Rock versus Brock match, the
Was
Triple
there?
H versus HBK unsanctioned. Yeah.
Yes,
Sorry, go.
I was at that SummerSlam. That was my first. That was my first of older Joe's experience with wrestling and seeing the new era, seeing Shawn Michaels in there again, seeing Triple H as the utter jerk character, like
Mm-mm.
just seeing The Rock on his way out of the door and seeing Brock on his rise, like seeing Paul Heyman being before he was the Messiah character, he was just Paul Heyman, back behind.
Mm.
He's like holding Brock's shoulders, going, you'll get this," like you know what I
Mm.
mean. The antagonist, Paul Heyman, like
Yeah. Yeah, look, it was a great card all round. A couple of other things stand out. One, I think there was the Rey Mysterio Kurt Angle match where Kurt eventually tapped Rey out with the ankle lock, but also, and of relevance to me, was that was interestingly where Howard Finkel was doing a heel run. And he came out and sort of made anti-Long Island jokes, if I remember,
yep.
or remarks. So it just was like, oh, wow, here's wrestling again. And of course, on the back of the video cover was WWE.com. So I began to reconnect more throughout the 2000s. But still had never thought I could be in wrestling. I didn't have a great time at school with sport because I'm not a hand to eye or foot to eye reflex sport person. So things like football codes of any sort. In Australia's summer, it was cricket, which is analogous enough to softball or baseball. I wasn't good at those sports, so I didn't think I was much of a sporting or athletic or physical person at all. But I'd always wanted, I'm a great talker, and I'd always deep down, I think I would also almost use the word fantasized about being a ring announcer and or commentator, given that I believe I have a way with words. And anyway, life went on until around 2019 to 21, where I'll just, without to avoid distractions, I had a disruption in what I thought was my white collar career that was quite upsetting. And I was trying to deal with that, find work afterwards, deal with the psychological impact. And a friend who was assisting me said, "You're doing the right things after what happened, but why don't you go see this alternative healing person?" Who said to me, "Your voice is stifled. You need to find ways to express yourself," which was an interesting thing. And the first thing that came into my head was this deep buried fantasy of wanting to be in wrestling. And I finally connected with our local scene in Melbourne, which was beginning to pick up after those 2 years we don't want to talk about anymore, called the pandemic.
Mm.
And a friend had bought me a ticket to one of, I would say, the three largest promotions in Melbourne, logically called Melbourne City Wrestling. And I had a great time and, found, just really enjoyed it and started going every month to these shows. And then in early 2023, I went to a show put on by another large promotion called Relentless School of Pro Wrestling. By Renegades of Wrestling, I beg your pardon, which I stumbled onto on social media. I came home from that show. I'd had a blast, and as always, I was doing my own commentary, standing in this Renegade show. I had a spot standing less than 2 meters from ringside, and people next to me were loving the commentary. I came home and stumbled onto I went to the Renegades website to find out when the next show was, and stumbled onto Relentless School of Pro Wrestling, which is around 30 kilometres to the west of the Melbourne downtown / central business district area. And what helped me there was they had on their site, there were no non-refundable upfront fees for a tryout, and they would help people become commentator, ring announcer, and possibly manager. And it was like, oh, wow, that's for me. So I contacted them. To my immense pleasure, the guy who runs the school, whose wrestling name is Jake Navarra, came back to me over the weekend, and I'd contacted them at 1:15 on a Saturday morning in my excitement, and said, sure, come and meet with me. And by the time I met with him a week after that, I thought, well, I can talk. I'd love to be a manager like Paul Heyman and Bobby Heenan. To me are the two, it's very hard to split them as the two greatest managers, in my opinion. There's lots of other great ones like Jimmy Hart, Freddie Blassie, Lou Albano. but those two just, they have it. And Heenan's ability on commentary to go seamlessly from play-by-play to colour neutral to colour heel was, to me, incredible. And my third favourite, and my other two favourite commentators, Jim Ross is inevitable, and also Jesse Ventura for pioneering heel commentary. And it was like, oh, wow, this was what this alternative healer had said. So off I went. And when I went to meet with Jake and said, oh, I'd like to try manager, he said, oh, you'll have to learn some bumps and rolls if you want to do that. And my initial thought was a bit anxiety, but something in me said, oh, well, how can you commentate if you've never even tried it? I'd always seen in Australia cricket and Australian rules football commentators, who would at least would have kicked or handballed a ball or whatever, or bowled a cricket ball. So I tried it, and it's the form of physical exercise that I've enjoyed the most in my life. So I've kept going, and I made my in-ring debut. It's around just over a year ago now, in a battle royal for another promotion here in Melbourne called Alpha Pro Wrestling. So it's been a long and winding road, to quote the Beatles, but I feel like I'm out of the forest and onto the highway, and accelerating in this journey.
Oh wow, that's amazing. I just
Yeah.
I just find it so cool that you you look up to the so many like honorable people that have been behind the booth, and like now you're getting in the ring to take part in the action. What does it feel like that you're taking the leap of going in the ring and doing the action that you call? Does it feel different that you're going to be in the ring? You know what I mean? Than calling it.
Yeah, it does. But it feels good, I suppose, which is the obvious thing, which may sound obvious. I mean, otherwise I wouldn't do it. And to go back to a couple of your earlier questions, why do I like it? I wish I knew the answer to that. I'd possibly be one of the richest people in the world, because I can't explain it in an analytical way. I just know that when I'm involved in wrestling, including in ring, I'm really connected to what I love to do. It's really just a very deep heart and soul connection. It's almost, this may sound a bit amazing, but it's almost a spiritual journey to do wrestling and be in the ring. I just feel I feel powerful and grounded at the same time. And in terms of doing it from commentary, I think it's great to have done commentary, because you can get a close-up look and see what needs to be done and then apply it in the ring. So it's been a bonus to do commentary, but obviously, yes, to think, to have everything processing at the same time, sort of, what am I going to do next? How do I relate to the crowd? What move, etc. It's, obviously engaging a lot of parts of the brain and body parts, but I'm a sucker for a challenge, so I love doing it. But seriously, it's, the best thing I've ever done. And that moment, I came through the curtain for that battle royal, which is a great bit of story, a good small story in itself. I honestly think was the best I've ever felt in my life.
Well, like a battle royal, you, you it's. I've had so many male and female wrestlers that tell me that their matches, the battle royal. I always get that thought in thought in my head, like getting tossed in a battle royal. It could be fun, or it could be like your first and last match, because like you're not in the match. You're not gonna get pinned. They're not gonna put you in a stretcher Armstrong sleeper hold. Your butt's going over that top rope, and if you fall smooth and you go over the top rope and you land wrong, your thumb goes behind you will be ending your career. And as I wish I had this clip, the clip from South Park, and it's gone. Like you could land wrong and your wrist could go back and be like, and it's over. And like that video from South Family Guy, the start of the New York Mets season, and the season is over. Damn it! Like, yeah, do you know what
Well,
I mean?
look, very, very true. But I suppose I'd say two things in relation to that. trainers at Relentless are very experienced and gave great grounding in fundamentals, which I think for anyone starting whenever they start in ring, I think to get those basic bumps and rolls and footwork right was essential. And they were very good at that. And also, going over the top rope, being taught how to do those sort of foundations right, I think was so critical. And they were very, very good at that. And other schools I've trained with since have added to that, which is really, really amazing. And someone else said something to me once, even though granted a battle royal is not a singles or tag match, they said after you've done that first match, you'll of any sort, you'll know when you want if you want to go on with it. And it was like, to the quote Stone Cold, hell yeah, I wanted to go on with it. And I've kept going, and it's just been amazing.
Awesome. Do you see any wrestlers that you want to throw down with, or is anybody you want to like really want to call their match that have not been to Australia yet, or they have been in Australia, but they have not. You have not had a chance to work with them yet.
Yeah, well, look, that actually links back to a question you asked earlier, sort of what might have pushed me over the line to cross the barrier. And there were three people in wrestling who I'd want to acknowledge, and then the third will link to the answer to that question. The first was Renee Paquette when she was doing commentary for WWE, and some people have said that maybe that wasn't something she enjoyed, and maybe she said that, but she certainly gave a sense of visibility, being a commentator on a top level wrestling show that people could do it. And so if Renee, you're hearing this, eventually you started to wake up something in someone that inspired me to go forward. The second person was referee Jessica Carr. And when I heard about her personal story, that she didn't have a good time at school, was bullied, was for being overweight or not being athletic, or she also tells a story on her last night in NXT about someone said when she tried out for referee school that she was a lousy referee, but she kept going. I find her story amazing. But to answer your last question, I think if there was someone's match I'd love to call, it would be Rhea Ripley. And that's for the obvious reasons that she is this Australian character who's just made it to the top and been herself. Unfortunately, growing up in the 80s, we, in my opinion, sadly had a lot of very stereotypical characters of all cultures and nationalities. And I have nothing against this person, but I remember in the mid 1980s, the character called Outback Jack was developed on the back of the Crocodile Dundee movies.
Yep.
And I can understand why that character would have happened and why that person took the job. I can, understand and respect that. But it was stereotypical for me to see someone like Rhea Ripley be, excuse the Australian language, Rhea bloody Ripley, and say mate, and just be allowed to do that positively may sound small to a lot of people, but to me it's huge. And so to call a Rhea Ripley match would just be, wow, dream come true, because I think there is this absolute, whether she's babyface or heel, this just badass woman who's being herself is just so important. And she really has inspired a lot of Australians to, I think, connect more to wrestling, particularly women of all ages, because people can relate to her in a lot of ways. So those three people, but have inspired me, and particularly Rhea Ripley in the modern era, I mean, is just incredible. And, she's an amazing all-round performer. Her promo work, in-ring work, character / gimmick, the whole thing is incredible. So to call a match of hers would just be Dream City on, heaven on earth type of stuff.
Awesome. So do you ever like when you go? I've asked this question to a lot of wrestlers. Like when it comes to packing your bag for the show, do you always, because wrestlers, they do the clothing, they do their gear, they do the merch. Do you, because you do both commentary and wrestlers, do you ever pack two bags just in case they say we want you in a match tonight, but they also want you on the booth because this guy or girl couldn't do it because they were sick? Do you ever pack two bags? And do you pack them the day of the show, or do you pack them the day before? AK, are you a last minute Lucy, or are you an early bird?
I'm probably more of a last minute Lucy, in that it's usually on the day. And look, the second thing I remember being taught in wrestling was always carry gear with you. And for me, that therefore is ring announcer / commentator gear and in-ring gear. Because we were told you never know when someone does drop out because they have the flu, sudden injury, car breaks down, family.
Obligations.
Yeah, particularly in Australia where the independent scene is relatively small and niche and people can't earn a living from it. Family obligations, etc., will come into it. So that was the second thing that I remember learning in wrestling. The first, just for the record, was, which may sound obvious, how to get in through the ropes without looking like a doofus, which I always notice when a sponsor of a representative of a sponsor's at a wrestling event and they're giving away a prize of some sort, and they always look like they're going to tangle themselves getting through the ropes. And apparently, I've been told we don't teach sponsors how to get through the ropes so they'll stand out. I'm not sure if that's fair or not, but we'll go with it. So yeah, I packed the whole bag, but I'm being someone who's neurodivergent, both autism and ADHD. I have a checklist for each component. So yeah, I pack my bag, usually on the day, although if it's an early start, the main day per month where there are the promotion that I'm now most involved with, whose t-shirt I'm wearing, Alpha Pro Wrestling, based in the northern suburbs of Melbourne, has both an afternoon matinee show, excuse me, and an evening show. And so I'll usually pack the night before on that one. And it does lead, though, to that first Battle Royal moment, which was brilliantly booked by Adam Crow, who was the booker at that time at Alpha Pro Wrestling, and that I was the ring announcer for the first 5 matches, and the 5th was the Battle Royal. And so all the wrestlers who are scheduled to be in the match have come out, and they're jaw-jacking one another, and I'm on the microphone in the ring. Alpha Nation, I've just been informed, looking at my phone, management have just informed me there is a surprise entrant in this match. And I've then done the introducing, and of course no one comes out. I'm so sorry, I'll just go backstage and find out what's going on, and have to do the quick change to get out of ring announcer gear, throw that off backstage, and then introduce myself from backstage, and just as I say my name, come out. And yeah, that was how it worked. And so it was very well booked by Adam, and yeah, that's how I do it. So, and that's happened a couple of times since, which has worked as well. But yeah, so yes, I have to carry everything and merch, and sort of if depending on where the venue is, the food supplies and whatever else that I might need. Yeah.
Like, do you have any fun stories on like the day of a show when it comes to like traveling?
Travel stories.
I love those. Those are my favorite ones. You know what I mean? Like getting to like you have
Mm.
to stop for gas, and like in the America, we don't know if you guys have Wawa in Australia, but we have Wawa, and people stop to get their sandwich, they get their drink, they got their sandwich, and then they look at the phone, and they go, "Holy crap! I have to be there like in 15 minutes." Crap.
No, again, look, I suppose that again, with dry humor, that's my autism and ADHD that has, said, okay, if bump in time is, on a day for Alpha, it would usually be around 11:30. I have looked at my GPS the night before and worked out the travel time, and yes, allowed for the morning coffee, so that's 5 or 10 minutes extra, those sorts of things. So I'm pretty organised like that in terms of travel. The only unfortunate travel time was where I got a lift with someone to do ring crew, which meant an even earlier start. And unfortunately, they had a flat tire, so we had two people stayed with the car, and the other two caught public transit to get from where we were, where we noticed the flat tire when we were stopping for that coffee, Wawa's, food, etc., to the venue, which thankfully wasn't too far away. So that's about the only travel story that I have at the moment. But there's just been so many, just fun moments doing commentary and wrestling that, I'm happy to share a couple.
Awesome. What is on your Spotify playlist?
Spotify playlist. I'm working. I've now decided to borrow from the old wrestling adage of take your natural personality and ramp it up to Spinal Tap 11.
Okay.
I am working on the fact that I'm older. So my gimmick now as a baby face is to go on the fact in terms of for music is to go with mainly the sort of 70s and 80s rock that I grew up with. And as a baby face, I'll be saying things as a, sort of, why don't people come out to those nice Beatles and Rolling Stones anymore, or silly things like that, and having fun with it. So I grew up with, on an international level, musicians like Bob Seger and the Eagles. In the Australian level, the band Midnight Oil, Men at Work, and Colin Hayes' subsequent solo career, which I don't think enough people everywhere are aware of. He's an amazing singer-songwriter. All those sorts of areas. We had in the 70s and into the 80s in Australia, the classic pub rock era that created bands like Midnight Oil, In Excess, Mental as Anything, Men at Work, all those ones who went on to top the charts around the world. And that's the sort of era that I'm going to represent because it's authentic. And so that would be my sort of Spotify playlist. But I'm also, I've been known to listen to music of all kinds, country, western, and bluegrass, and love the 70s singer-songwriter Tom T. Hall. So there's a whole range of music. I'm more someone who listens for the song than a particular genre. So if it's a great dance song that says something, then I'll listen to it. So it's rock and country based, to summarize, but it can be eclectic, would be my Spotify or go-to list.
Okay. Um, Before we go, if my fans want to follow you on social media, how can they find you?
The simplest way is to look for the Zali Gold link tree, where I'm on all the platforms: Instagram, X formerly Twitter, Blue Sky, and Facebook. And also, so that's the simplest way. And then you've got all four of them, and follow me there. And to me, that's the best way to follow me. And yes, please do. And yeah, love to hear from everyone.
Awesome. I want to thank you so much for coming with us on this Ringside Crew journey, and I'm so thankful. I know my fans are happy to have you on, and if you ever want to come back on Dudes at Ringside in the future, before the year ends, maybe even next year, for a recap or recap of what you're doing, it'd be so awesome. So, well, my last question is before you go, Miss Goldie, if you could write a letter to a younger you, what would you say in that letter and why?
Great question. I'd say that you will travel through some murky waters across all of your life, but you will get to do things that you really love and enjoy later in life. So hang in there. It keeps getting better, and you will connect with the people and places and activities that really matter to you, that are close to your heart and soul. And it is about persisting and listening to your inner voice as much as possible.
Awesome. Awesome. That letter stamp going into the time machine and gonna
Yep.
land somewhere in front of you as a teenager or whatever age you think that letter should go to. But thank you so much. I am Joe Panther the Third. You can find me here on the Joe Panther Variety Show on Facebook, under the Real Dudes at Ringside, on Instagram under the Dudes at Ringside Podcast, under the same name, Joe Panther Variety Show, on Spotify, where you can usually listen to anything or everything, Joe. I want to thank you all. I am Joe Panther the Third, and this
I am
is
Zali Gold, and remember in your own life that you always hold the gold.